All right, so let's get into the next topic, chat. We're going to start talking about Top H. All right. Apparently, the president of Argentina, Javier Milei, before you ask, now that we got that out the way, early life check. Let's go ahead and go into this clip here from Redacted. I talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I just kind of glossed over it because I was short on time. So we're going to do a little bit more of a deep dive on here, okay? Basically, Javier Milei just shocked the world releasing documents on Hitler's escape from Argentina in 1945. Now, before we get into this, let me give you guys the official narrative. The official narrative is that as Soviet forces were closing in on Germany, Hitler shot himself and self-deleted. And I think his wife took cyanide and poisoned herself. And he instructed his top guys to burn the corpse. By the time the Soviets came in, the body was burned, but still they were able to identify him as Hitler. And they were able to possibly identify that it was him through dental records. They compared dental records, if I'm not mistaken, from 1944 to the body they found, and it was a match. Now, obviously, people are skeptical because we know that there was a lot of lies in World War II. I'll just kind of keep it there. Okay? But yeah, let's get into this topic here.
This story and who have studied.
Turn up the volume for you ninjas.
The subject know that Adolf Hitler.
Guys, is that volume good? I got it at 250 right now. I noticed that. Oh, no wonder it's low. All right, that should fix the volume.
Hitler didn't kill himself in a bunker in Berlin as the Red Army closed in. I think that's, we all know that was a fabricated story, or if you watch this show, you probably understand that. Hitler actually fled Germany weeks before that using a group of underground tunnels that led to an airstrip. And that airstrip was flown. He was flown from Berlin out. It took submarines, or multiple submarines that were used, U-boats that were then sent to Argentina. In other words, Hitler lived for nearly 2 decades more in Argentina, along with vast numbers of the Third Reich. Well, now Argentinian President Javier Milei has just ordered the release of all remaining documents on all.
What are the chances? What a coincidence that the president of Argentina would be
all of those Nazis who fled Germany and moved to Argentina after World War II. Basically, it was almost like a second base of operations in Argentina. If you're not familiar with that, like basically the Third Reich operated out of Argentina.
Hey guys, we got 2,000 likes, man. Do me a favor, guys. Obviously, it takes a lot of time and effort to be able to give you guys these monologues off the top of my head. And, I do an enormous amount of research and spend a lot of time looking at this stuff so I can go ahead and give you guys a nicely succinct and worded thing. And I do this all off the top of my head, by the way. So the only thing I ask, guys, just like the video, you guys don't have to spend $1. If you guys are getting value from this stream and you guys are getting, learning something that you guys didn't know before, which is really my goal here, is to educate you guys on topics that are pretty forbidden for obvious reasons. I mean, hell, this is the reason why I got demonetized, guys. Talking about this shit is what actually got me demonetized, and I did it before October 7th. So the only thing I ask, man, like the video. Let's get, 4,000 likes if we can. We got 2,000 right now at the moment. Obviously information like this is heavily censored, right? We're getting a little bit more of an ability to speak about it now, but it's been a problem. I mean, hell, it got me demonetized and almost kicked off YouTube. So, that's why I have to word things in a certain way, but you guys are smart enough to, notice what I'm talking about. So yeah, just like the video. For me, guys, I'd really appreciate that. And let's get back to it, man.
And Germany. And many of them, including Adolf Hitler, lived in Argentina well after 1945. Most people know that Hitler lived out his days in Bariloche, Argentina until he died there in the mid-1960s. Yes, you can read the CIA documents about this. The FBI documents also about sightings of Hitler in this area. They knew about it. Of course they knew about it. It was largely facilitated, I think it's safe to say, by the United States and its allies. Operation Paperclip, anybody? Quid pro quo?
Also, if you look into this, the skull that is held in Russia that was supposedly the remains of Adolf Hitler with a bullet wound in it is female.
Yeah.
So when you look for proof that Hitler did in fact kill himself in the bunker, you are going to find a lot of dead ends.
Yeah, and all you need to read, you can read a great book on this called The Gray Wolf. It's a great book. There's many books written about this now. But yeah, the skull, the fragments, they ran the DNA tests on it, and the Soviets allowed them to do this testing. And even Stalin openly talked about that Hitler lived. He was not there, so Stalin even knew about it.
Now, people say that Stalin lied about it to justify aggression towards Germany, or continued aggression since Germany, because he said that we didn't eradicate the Nazi problem. But yeah, there's contention on both sides.
It's widely known in Argentina, by the way, well known, that Hitler sired 2 children while he lived in Argentina after the war. 2 girls. Wouldn't that be something to learn where Hitler's children are today? Like Hitler's descendants? That'd be interesting. Maybe we'll learn that in those documents as well. But we'll be watching this story. I'm fascinated. It seems like there's an open era of transparency right now. You might be wondering about the Epstein files. Our friend of the show, Kyle Seraphin, just a few minutes ago dropped a bombshell that he has confirmation from 2 agents who are actively working on the task force inside right now of the DOJ. They have 16 terabytes of data that they're going through right now on these Epstein files, hundreds of child victims. So there's all sorts of hoops and hurdles they have to jump over on all of this, but they're actively working on this, like a task force that's been assigned to deep dive all of the records of Jeffrey Epstein. So what's amazing to me is that during...
Yeah, the whole Epstein thing, man, has been a fucking monumental fail by the DOJ, man. Pam Bondi's been delivering, she's been fucking making a lot of promises and not delivering, dude. It's really fucking annoying. Yeah, it's we're gonna declassify. I mean, look, we got the JFK files, cool. But the thing is that everyone is dead from JFK. So it's what I really want, me just, keeping it real here, I want the fucking 9/11 files. That's what I fucking want. By the way, I forgot to mention this. I did an interview with Richard Gage, chat. It was fucking awesome. We covered how it was physically impossible for the towers to have fallen the way that they did outside of a controlled demolition. It's on Rumble for obvious reasons. I'll drop the link for you guys. That's the thumbnail. Pretty lit, huh? Yeah, so yeah, I dropped the link in there, guys. Go watch it for sure. Really interesting stuff.
During the Biden administration, they were sitting on 16 terabytes of information and files and child victims that they did nothing about. They just sat on this information and did nothing until President Trump comes in. So I think there's this era of transparency I'm hoping that we're seeing. Anyway, we'll be following this story.
I think the chat is I didn't know any of this. That's because you didn't marry Clayton Morris and we're not subjected to copious amounts of documentaries about
That's right.
this.
In fact, we reached out to Tim Kennedy, who was on the show. There's a great History Channel show called Hunting Hitler, which looked into a lot of this. But Tim Kennedy, who was a part of that group, we've invited Tim to come on the show. So hopefully he will tomorrow. We'd love to have Tim come on to talk more about this because this is a big story. I think most people, if you go to Grok or if you go to Google's AI, they'll be oh, that's been debunked. No, it hasn't. There's actually copious evidence that Hitler never was in Berlin when the Red Army came, and that, yes, he did live out his days in Argentina, and it was all well known by the...
Well, the biggest piece of evidence that people use for the official narrative are Hitler's dental records. That's by far the biggest evidence they use.
Intelligence agencies. So anyway, look.
Yeah, it's pretty well bunked at this point.
Because he had if I'm not mistaken, Hitler had crowns and bridges in his teeth. Also, it's important to note that they didn't find meat in his teeth. Hitler was a vegetarian, guys. He actually loved animals. Fun fact: Hitler was the first world leader to create animal cruelty laws. I know. A lot of people don't know that.
It is bunked. It's not a debunked. It's not a bunker.
Another point for conspiracy theorists. It's been a good year.
You know, the problem with these huge tech companies is they don't want just your money. It was through your ExpressVPN to be able to .com/redacted. The head of Argentina, of course, is now sort of following a lot of moves on transparency there to release these Nazi documents in Argentina. All of the Nazis that moved to Argentina had set up a base of operations there during World War II. It was almost like another version of Germany in a lot of ways. The Third Reich had set up a major base of operations in Misiones and Bariloche and multiple locations in Argentina. It's widely reported that Hitler survived, did not shoot himself. I don't think anyone really believes that. I certainly don't. And the evidence supports that he went to Argentina and lived out his days into the 1960s. So these documents that Argentina is about to release, what are you hoping you'll see? Is there anything there that stands out to you that you're looking at as a historian?
Yeah, and interestingly enough, that's having been involved with way too many subjects over the decades, I suppose. Yeah, very familiar with the so-called rat lines that took Nazis of all types, a lot of SS, but also a lot of scientists into Argentina. And I mean, amazingly, you find things like Argentina starting its own fusion nuclear program with Nazi scientists that had been working on atomic research in Germany. But the other thing you find is that the CIA had convinced themselves that a great number of these former Nazis from the intelligence community, from the SS, not just the scientists. We tend to think that they just brought the rocket scientist over, but they didn't. They brought a lot of intelligence people, but they didn't bring them directly from Europe. They kind of enabled them getting to Argentina, and then they recruited them from Argentina into the U.S. And if you really want the full story of what evolved with the intelligence network and to some extent why the intelligence network became so obsessed with communist operating, immediately prior to the end of the war, a lot of that influence came from these Nazis who, of course, had been fighting communism as much as anything else. And
right.
They had a major influence inside the American intelligence community. It would be great to see exactly how those ties evolved. We know they're there, but again, the devil is always in the details. Who and when, timing is especially critical.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would like more information about Operation Paperclip and how many of the Nazis held real positions of power inside the United States. Americans might be shocked to learn that. I hope we learn some of that in these documents. Larry, great to see you. The book is called The Oswald Puzzle. I know you're knee-deep in documents right now going through all of this. I hope you'll come back on the show with more revelations that we can talk about here on Redacted. Thank you so much, Larry.
Would love to. Thanks for having me.
All right. So Benny Johnson also reacted to this. Let's go ahead and get his take, because it's not common, that a mainstream conservative commentator will comment on something like this. So let's see what he's got to say. And it's titled, "Government Docs Prove Hitler Escaped with the Help of U.S. Intel Agency. It Changes Everything."
Oh my God. Oh my God, that's Hitler! What's up, guys? It's Benny. The internet has been set ablaze by new government documentation that Hitler...
Yeah, this went viral all over fucking Twitter, by the way.
...didn't die in a bunker.
Like 10 million views on this shit. Let me look it up.
...in Berlin by suicide in 1945, and instead lived out his days in a spa in Argentina with his children. Let's get into this new claim that is going viral right now. What is a rat line? This is what we know. As a matter of fact, a rat line is a system of escape for German Nazis, fascist leaders, fleeing Europe in 1945. They went from Germany to Spain, and then from Spain to Argentina. These are...
Yeah, guys, 9 million on this post on X. That's what made this shit viral. This comes from 1984, the official 1984. I'm a follow on Twitter. Yeah, 9 million fucking views on this thing, dude. Holy shit.
well-operated lines, and thousands of Nazis traveled on them, and they landed in Argentina, and many of them lived out their days. Starting in 1947, the United States intelligence agencies used these lines to move certain Nazi scientists to America to work for us and our space program, along with our other intel agencies. You ever heard of the
Yeah, also, you know, the nuclear arms race as well.
CIA? Got it. While consensus among Western scholars is that Nazi leader Adolf Hitler died by suicide, in the 1950s, the U.S.
Guys, also do me a favor. We got 2,266 likes, guys. Do me a favor. Like the video, guys. All right, like the video, my ninjas. Let's get to 4,000 likes.
investigated the claim that he survived and fled to South America. What'd they find out? We'll get to that in just a second. These lines were supported and some were operated by clergy of the Catholic Church, Austrian archbishops, Croatian priests, and so on. Very interesting history.
And we do know for a fact that a lot of the high-ranking Nazi members did make it to Argentina. That's why Mossad ran operations all over Argentina in the 40s, 50s, and 60s to find these guys. They kidnapped so many of these guys and brought them back to Israel to face trial.
History here. Ladies and gentlemen, now secret documents on Nazis who fled Argentina after World War II are being declassified by the Argentinian government. The documents will likely include Nazi-linked bank accounts and records documenting the use of Nazi rat lines. Right? So now Argentinian leader Javier Milei has said he is going to declassify everything. This is sort of like their own MLK, JFK files, right? These are the files that the government has had and has been holding for a very long time. Up to 10,000 Nazis and other fascist war criminals escaped justice for atrocities by fleeing to Argentina and other Latin American countries. Some of them were very high-level Nazis, including Adolf Eichmann and Joseph Mengele. Fled to South America. Rumors have swirled for years that...
Hey, guys, also, do me a favor. Brimless tipped $1. Yo, nigga, did you see that Clancy got banned from his own platform? Simp ass? Really? What the fuck? Okay.
Adolf Hitler also ended up there.
Yeah, guys, if you got a good story that you guys want me to react to, start sending them in. Start sending them in. I'll cover it after this.
Okay, so this has made massive news that Javier Milei is going to release these documents again. This is going to be a massive declassification operation. I think we'll learn quite a bit, in fact. But this is what went viral this weekend. A clip from the Redacted show, YouTube. It's a great show. I encourage you to subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. That says what these documents are going to show is that Adolf Hitler did survive.
Real quick, Darren says, Myron, love your show. You really opened my eyes and connected so many dots I've never considered. Would you indulge me and show the H. Simpson short clip on YouTube? Never heard of it.
This did millions of views on X. Let's watch and listen.
Story and who have studied this
yeah, it was 4 million yesterday. Now it's fucking 9 million.
know that Adolf Hitler didn't kill himself in a...
Oh, yeah. That's a breaking story. Yeah, I think the death penalty is on the table for Luigi Mangione. We're talking about that. Let me cue that up for y'all ninjas. I'm going to close some of these tabs. Oh, the great noticing.
bunker in Berlin as the Red Army closed in. I think that's... we all know that was a fabricated story, or if you watch the show, you probably understand that.
My bad.
Hitler actually fled Germany weeks before that using a group of underground tunnels that led to an airstrip, and that airstrip was flown. He was flown from...
My bad, John. Oh, no. Okay. Shit, we were watching the same one. My bad.
South America, rumors of...
story, or if documents paraded out of Argentina.
Of Hitler with a bullet.
In the wake of new historians expressed doubts, though. His death...
Learn where Hitler's children are today, like Hitler's descendants. That'd be interesting. Maybe we'll learn that in those documents as well. But we'll be watching this story. I'm fascinated. It seems like there's an open era of transparency right now. You might.
So let's dive in here, because there's a lot of claims in there. First, let's go to the direct evidence of Hitler's death, which is 2 small skull fragments that were recovered by the Red Army, allegedly after Hitler shot himself and then had his body burned. Tests on skull fragments cast doubt on Adolf Hitler's suicide story. Bone with bullet hole found in Russia, found by the Russians in 1946, came from an unknown woman, not the German leader. Oh, why Hitler's world may not be so far away. Countless biographies of Adolf Hitler and the story of his final hours recounted the traditional version, committing suicide with Eva Braun in Berlin by a cyanide pill and then shot himself. Some historians expressed doubts, though. And also, it is true that Joseph Stalin regularly raged that they never had any direct evidence of Hitler's death. In the wake of new revelations, stories of Hitler's death may need to be rewritten. American researchers claim to have demonstrated that the skull fragment secretly preserved for decades by Soviet intelligence belonged to a woman under 40 whose identity is unknown. DNA analysis performed of the bones held by the Russian state in Moscow has been processed by a genetics lab at the University of Connecticut. The results broadcast by U.S. History Channel. Hitler's escape astonished scientists. According to the Connecticut archaeologist, the bone specialist, Nick Ballatoni, it was clear that from the outset something was amiss. The bone seemed very thin. Male bones tend to be more robust. The structures of the skull plates came together seemed to correspond with somebody under 40. Hitler was in his 50s. Ballatoni flown to Moscow to inspect the gruesome Hitler trophies at the state archives and included skull fragment and bloodstains from the bunker sofa in which Hitler and Braun were believed to have committed suicide. He was allowed only 1 hour with the Hitler trove, during which he applied a cotton swab and took DNA samples, had the reference photos the Soviet took to sofa. He came back to Connecticut, ran the tests, and, well, ping, this is a woman skull. So this is...
Now, the official narrative, people say that it was just a simple mistake. Hitler did, in fact, die. They just swapped the skulls accidentally. That's what the official narrative says.
Clearly not Hitler. The skull DNA was incontestably female, he found. Skull fragments the Russian dug up could not have belonged